He had over 100 missions in this airplane.
Oh, wow.
And he had one story there when they were coming back in from a flight. I can't let you tell it.
Which one is this?
That's when you and Sonny came back
Okay.
in. You want to fire away this kind of. But I'll get Manny to kind of tell you what a typical mission would be like in that airplane. And if you can do that too, that'd be great.
Okay. My pilot and I inadvertently set an altitude record in that airplane. The normal ground speed flight altitude for that plane, operational altitude, was about 1,500 feet. And we're going out to an area of operation, and we were down in the Mekong Delta. We were flying out of TilTul, which was in Cork, which was the bottommost area that the Army had, area of operation. We were flying south down along Mekong, and that particular day we had a lot of a large weather front. And we were flying along at night. You'd see these rows and rows of small thunderstorm clouds. And we're flying along like this and trying to get around the darn thing. We're thinking, hey, we keep going like this, it's going to take us forever to get out to the AZ, and we'll only be able to spend there a few minutes. So we came across this bright idea of flying through, save some time. And we looked down, we picked out this one, looked like it's the smallest of the bunch. He said, oh, that's not too bad, it's not too big. It looks like only a mile or two across, and it didn't look that high. Big mistake. So we get, okay, fine, let's go. We both agree, we fly into the cloud. And I have a whiteout, and I'm sitting in the front there, and I'm seeing the prop spin. We have our running lights on, just why, I don't know why I can't see nothing. And I'm a little oblivious. And I start noticing, I start hearing things, and I look out in the wingtip, and we have these spoiler tabs, which we only use for landing. And he's got these things all the way up. And I'm thinking, now, why does he have those on? So then I look over at the altimeter on my control panel instrument, and I'm watching the altimeter doing this. I mean, it is just flying. And it still doesn't dawn on me that something's wrong. And it wasn't until the stick, control stick, they were linked together, and he had pulled this thing back and went clunk far forward. And that altimeter is still flying. And it dawned on me, we're in trouble. So I stopped real quick, and I gather up my equipment, I lock everything away, and I key the mic, and I said, equipment's stowed, to let him know that everything was put away. And then he tells me, yeah, we got a little problem here. We're climbing faster than we're physically possibly able to do it. And he had been on the other radio channel calling the area operations officers, radio controller, radar, says, hey, can you see us? And he gives us locations. No, you're not showing up. I said, well, we're in trouble. We flew through the thundercloud, and we're up at 10,000 feet, and he was worried about the big boys, the jets, the F4s, and them flying along, and they pass through the clouds, no problem at all. But the problem is we're inside the cloud. They don't see us. If they didn't hit us, them just flying by us, the prop would probably put us in a spin. And I don't remember all the details, but the pilot tells me we went up to about 10,000 plus. Then we caught a downdraft, and we started falling down. And we didn't go nose down, we just kind of went like this, down like that. And finally we get to this point and decided it's time to get the heck out of here. And we did a right turn and flew out 45 degrees from the point of engine. So we looked out there, and we're way a lot higher than we're supposed to be, or even should be, and we don't have no oxygen. So we weren't in the cloud too long, thank goodness. And the rest of the evening we spent flying around all the clouds, making sure we didn't care how long it took. But it was kind of a pretty sight, because you're flying along and you're seeing these clouds, and they look like ships of a line, just flying, just floating along, one behind another. And we went through about, there was 4 rows of 4 fronts before we got out to our area, which was beautiful moonlit night. And it's strange to remember that, because that experience probably didn't last more than 5-10 minutes. And we would go out for like 3 or 4 hours. And I talked to Captain Sid Morrow at the time. He's in D.C., and he still he rags his kids about the story about flying in and setting an altitude record and going on. For years, they didn't believe him until he actually ran into me, and I was able to confirm, yeah, we were out that night flying around, we flew the clouds, and we went up a lot higher than we were supposed to.
Manny, what, can you tell us, like, the mission equipment's in the front, and you have
Okay.
an ocular.
You see this picture here? Basically, that's what it looks like when you're looking through the scope. You're looking at a positive in the film, and using existing light, everything's kind of got a greenish tint. Now, this was the latest technology at the time. It was only functionally 2 years in use. And I can remember reading about it in Popular Mechanics, and later on, I just recently bought the very magazine that I read 20 odd years ago, about a year before I went in. Oh wow, this is neat. And I got to use it, but you're looking at the scope, and it's basically just kind of imagine the white being dark and all the black being white. And it's like this, a tunnel vision. And part of the problem was you're looking at this, and your head's down there, and you're down in a position like this all night. And are you familiar with highway narcosis? White line fever, where you look at the white line and you're driving in the middle of the night for a long time, you fall asleep? Well, that did happen to me looking through the scope. It was a boring night, there was nothing going on, and we just do a general sweep. We fly an area, the pilot flies a parent, I'm looking for lights, any kind of detectable movement. Because the VC, their enemy, they're walking around the jungle at night, they can't see either, so they're using the light to find a way. Even if they know the area, trying to walk through a thick forest is real difficult. And we would keep track, okay, this position, this location, we saw this many lights, and they were heading off in this direction, and that's the information I would report to Intel. So one particular night, I fell asleep, and we'd see, yeah, that's pretty much like it is right there. But a picture of the cockpit.
Yeah, let me get this.
The pilot's instrument panel is kind of tall. When the canopy comes over, you don't have much room or leeway. So anyway, the pilot had to unstrap himself out of the seat because he tried calling me and I was non-responsive. Leaned over his, let's see it, his dashboard, and with something, a stick, and I'm wearing a helmet, he's smacking me over the head to wake me up. And he finally got my attention, I woke up. But it was, that was one of the dangers. The other problem you have, you're in that plane for 3 or 4 hours, and there's no pit stops, no restrooms. And you had a little P2. So you always had to make sure that you were fit to fly 4 hours without having to go to the bathroom. You gotta remember, they didn't have Depends in those days. So,
I got a good shot.
yeah. You got a point or something?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, wait. It's a top. Top right. There you go.
This is what I'm talking about. And that's supposed to be me right there, and that's what I'm supposed to be down looking at. And I have a little joystick right here. And this rotates the ball while I'm looking. And he had to unbuckle himself. We're strapped into the seat. There actually is a parachute in there. But it's more like a seat cushion. Because you're to bail out of this thing would be extremely difficult. Because part of the lift is that cockpit, so when you open that canopy up and it gets blown away, the plane starts really falling down. But anyway, he had to reach over and hit me over the head to get me to wake up. So much for that story.
What did it look
How
like?
about-
The image, how clear was the image?
Yeah, what magnification?
Like that? Oh, what, the magazine?
Yeah, what magnification, field of view and stuff. Previous code.
I forgot.
Operating altitude was 1,500 feet. about 10, if I remember right.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah. So,
I know George Walker said he did, and I think some of the other pilots said, a lot of the initial spottings were actually, the airplane's so quiet, is you actually spotting things initially. You could see lights or whatever, and then you could come in on the target. It depended
I
on.
was always afraid that because the full moon was out, we could see them real well, they could see us real well. See a big bird flying in, something big in the sky flying around. Maybe they might think it's a bird or something, but after a while, when that bird starts doing one of these numbers, then they get the idea. And I remember flying over little villages and seeing the lights, I'm counting the lights, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking, who's up at this time of night? And then you start seeing all the lights go off. And you fly away, then look back, because it would rotate all the way to 360 degrees. And I could see all the lights coming out, so they see us, they know we're in the air. And we'd fly around, count the lights, see what activity there is. On a real good night, we could see them on sampans, small ones and big ones. We chase sampans on the delta, in the waterways, the canals, and out on the ocean. I had a couple of times to fly out, and you could see them moving along the coastline. And I'm not talking about the fishing boats. These guys weren't fishing. So,
What kind of, you guys work with the ordnance, what kind of stuff did you work with?
we
Navy?
didn't have any ordnance.
I know, there was nothing on there, but what did you guys work with?
We worked mostly with the helicopters,
Yep.
gunships of various types. The Marines had the OV-10, which was basically a little flying tank, and it had a very big 73 caliber shoot projectile about like that. 2 guys only in it. And they had infrared, and they could see our infrared signal, which was this one here is our infrared light. And it would shoot one of these out, and they could track it. So we could pinpoint a target, and then they could see it with their equipment and really light it up.
It was an infrared searchlight, or was it?
Yes.
Infrared, yeah, an infrared
It
searchlight.
didn't put a spot on the target. It just illuminated the target.
Yes, it would. It's just like this, but it'd be a bigger light. And we would just try to center it on the target that we were talking about, pin it and pointing it out. And then they could see exactly where we were looking. A lot of times, bringing up the gunships out, we're trying to pinpoint a target, and we're working off maps. And there was a problem there. They didn't have. We were working on 1 to 125. Sometimes there'd be disagreement over the definition of the map, because even my pilot had a different style map. And this is one concern I always had: so how he could tell what target I'm working at or where I'm looking at, because there is a big difference. And they had these crazy maps. They learned how to cut up a bunch of maps and put them into a folder, and like the Rubik's Cube, just take them a minute and they had to find an area. I was working on, they give me a sheet about the size of one of these. That was my area of operation. And we'd be down here at Long Tom North. The Saigon River would be going up here. Right there would be LBJ, Long Bin. Now across the river, the Saigon would be the Saigon area. And then we'd be flying up the Song B way the heck up here. And that's what I worked with. And the pilot had a map that was the minimum size of that. More detail. So we were always having conflicting fighting over the location. And we didn't know exactly what the Army used, or the Air Force used, or the Marines used. So there was some confusion there.